Now I want to discuss the sound producer, the right hand. This is the sound producer. The left hand is the sound. So this is the right hand is the one that actually deals with dynamics and the percussiveness or the long or short note situations, the producer. Now, there are many different ways that you can, we call it pizzicato it's a term used to use the fingers. So, but I don't just use my fingers, I use my whole arm. This is where you get the weight in the sound. This is how you can get depth in your sound. The finger is only so strong. So if you play like this, you get a kind of whack, 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 whack kind of sound that's not, and there's only so much energy you can put into it for volume, and eventually you're going to hurt the finger. So I'm suggesting that you begin to use the weight of your arm, and if you could use the arm, the elbow, but the whole arm, but to kind of pay attention to the elbow as a preparatory beat, and one. So when you go like this, notice I'm actually pulling the string, and you can actually see it move. But if I just do it with the finger, you don't have a pulse, first of all. It's not, just not there. So I'm suggesting that you begin to work like this, the G string, D string, A string. Now the E string, if you notice when we play on the D string and the A string, if I pull this string, my energy, I land on the A string just because of the physical energy. But if I play the E string, there's no place for me to go. Now, this doesn't seem like far, but to come from here to back over here takes time, and then we've messed with the actual time flow when we're walking a bass line. So we don't want that. We want to stay as close as possible to the instrument. So think of the E string kind of like if you were going to turn a key in a door. You kind of squeeze and turn. So I'm actually squeezing here, but I'm still using my arm, and then I just turn the wrist so that I actually, if I did it in slow motion, you might want to read something on your palm. I mean, not really, but it's just in slow motion. So I'm actually going and I turn it in. I'm just taking that energy and keeping it as opposed to letting it come away. And you'll see some people play like this, and it's a very awkward looking thing, and believe it or not, your sound will be awkward too. So now let's go from the extreme, from the E string to the G string. Now notice what I'm doing with my arm, and I have to, I'm preparing each one. Now this is your extreme, so if you notice, the arm is doing this. Now, if I want to play louder, I just add weight. If I want to play softer, I don't change the motion. I just change the weight. W-E-I-G-H-T. And to me, if you begin to have control, kind of looks like a chicken wing when it's, it's just kind of flying here. And so you can practice here. So you might also want to just practice scales with a teeter-totter, maybe a chromatic scale or something on the G string. But now I go to all strings. And once you get comfortable with that motion, you'll be amazed you have the control. You should have control dynamically of everything that comes out of the instrument. So the one finger, there's no way that you can actually begin to get tone and make that string. Look at that string open up. You can see the string work. That means the instrument is happy and your sound is projecting. All of the instrumentalists in an ensemble are responsible for the groove, the time, the pulse, if you will. Many people think the drummer is supposed to be the timekeeper, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but that's not true. We are all responsible for it. So, I mean, I have to do it myself. Now, internalizing the groove is really something that I think is overlooked too often by a lot of people because it's so simple to do, but I think it's one of the most important things. You know, why do people snap their fingers? The tempo is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, but the pulse is 1, 1, 2, 1, 2. So it's actually the larger picture. If it goes faster, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, you don't actually go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, you go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1. And it becomes, then you can relax with it. It's the same tempo, but it's relaxed because if the faster you go, you must go to the bigger picture, the pulse. The pulse is that thing, remember, that actually projects to the audience, that makes people get to you, you know, by your pulse. So, if I'm going to play, and let me just go back from E to A. So I'm actually physically getting involved in it, grooving myself with it. You don't need everybody else. Now, listen, see if you can listen to the difference in the sound when I do this. As opposed we're talking basically about a richness in the sound, and the pulse is just huge. But you're the pulse coming through the instrument. Now, if you can begin to incorporate that in everything you play, you're going to be in demand because the people want that. You cannot make people hire you. They must want what you have. So every time you play, people say, ooh, I love the way that you play. Well, that means you must be projecting in some kind of pulse. And that's the name of the game, because you want them to keep calling you. I was discussing the right hand as the sound. If you notice, I used only the one finger. Now, this is from the tradition. One of my mentors, Ray Brown, one of his mentors, Oscar Pettiford or Jimmy Blanton, Milt Hinton. We're talking about bass players who were very famous in the 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s. Paul Chambers learned how to play from Oscar Pettiford. That was done with one finger. You had this big fat sound. Now, you can still use two fingers. Some people, even today, use the two fingers and they play like this, maybe, or they turn the wrist where it's absolutely perpendicular to the string and they play here. Now, you still get a different sound, slightly different, but I don't really care how many fingers you use or how you use them. I think you should think about the sound as to why you use them. And so they all give a different sound. If you come perpendicular, you have this sound. But the faster you play, it might be a little, the sound becomes diminished slightly. If you were going to play across the string, you could do the two finger this way, but in order to get the two finger, the sound changes slightly. And that's all I'm asking you to consider. The sound changes. If that's what you want, great. But I want the biggest, fattest, most robust, warm sound possible. And until the music is, or the tempo is so fast that perhaps it's better to use two fingers just for more accuracy. But actually when I'm playing now, I'm using one finger, two fingers, and I'm mixing it up depending on what I have to do. But I just want you to be concerned about the sound of it, because when you change the position of your right hand, it does change the sound. The sound diminishes. As opposed to it changes. So it's your choice. Learn to do both. Now, learning to play the scales on one string so that you get the same sound, one finger. Two fingers. It's a different sound. Your choice. Okay, so let's talk about now the left hand. The left hand is very crucial in that I don't want you to grab the bass or the neck kind of like this, where you're actually grabbing it. You see the thumb, and I'm actually grabbing it, trying to hold on to it. And I would like you to have much more mobility, and I would like you to not play flat-handed, because when you do, your hands are going to get tired, and consequently, what feels best is when you do that, because now you've taken away the pain. I hate pain. I think you will too. So if you could concentrate on using the arm, just like on the right hand, using your weight. So I'm actually going to now do something like this. Notice my fingers are somewhat arched. And I could play like this, that's okay, but you can actually do this. And notice, instead of me playing here on the G string, and if I'm not careful, I can go over here. And some people have really long fingers. I have a friend in New York, his name is Ron Carter. He's got fingers this long, and he can just play all over the bass, but my fingers aren't quite that long. But he has great hand positions too. So if you keep the fingers arched, but in order to play the E string, which is larger than the G string, and you put less weight on it or less attention to it, which is not really correct. So you want this, and you want it to look the same. So I'm actually moving the entire arm, like so. Pivoting. So if I hit the G string here, and I pivot over to the D string, and then I pivot over to the A string, and then I pivot over to the E string. So now, if you look, I can play the G string, and then I can also play the A string while I'm still holding the G string. Look at the string move. And then if I go and play the C, I can play the D without leaving the C. Then I can play the F and play the G. So you can practice this. This is kind of a barometer. So if you play the G string and you can't get a sound out of the A string, just pivot the arm up a little bit and you'll find that spot. And so consequently, so then you could play an F, let's say an F major scale. Play the A before you leave the G, B flat, C, play the D before you leave the C, E flat, F, that's a dominant scale, the E flat, and go to the G. F, major, dominant. And so consequently, you begin to, everything is kept close, and you're always still getting sound. So here again, I'm using my weight and the pivoting of my arm. Along with the producer, I've got the sound. Remember, the left hand is your sound. This is the sound producer.